We code with stars, reaching for the sky. Each line a brushstroke, painting world.
Hi stars. Welcome back to another episode of FastAPI Chronicles on CodeStar, where we code with the stars. My name is Forster, and I'm here with you. Because you are the star. Today we're about to dive into something super exciting. In this video, we're going to set up our environment and create our very first FastAPI instance. But before we jump in, let's talk about what you need to get started. First things first, what are the prerequisites for this course? Well, this course is designed to be as beginner-friendly as possible, so if you have any background in programming, you're in the right place. But if you already know Python, then you're good to go. And hey, if you're coming from a JavaScript background, don't worry, I've got you covered too. This course will walk you through everything step by step, making sure that you feel confident every step of the way. Now, let's talk tools. To follow along with this course, you'll need a code editor or an IDE installed on your computer. For this video, I'll be using Visual Studio Code. It's lightweight, powerful, and a favorite among developers. You can download it for your operating system, whether you're on Windows, Linux, or Mac OS, by visiting code.visualstudio.com. I will leave the links in the description below. It's free, easy to install, and I highly recommend it. I already have it on my system, so I am not going to install it. You'll also need to have Python installed, specifically version 3.6 or higher, since that's what FastAPI supports. If you don't have Python installed yet, don't worry, head over to python.org, download the latest version for your OS, and follow the installation instructions. Once you've got Python installed, you're all set to start coding. So, to recap, you need some programming knowledge. Python is preferred, Visual Studio Code as your code editor or any IDE like PyCharm, and Python 3.6 Plus installed on your machine. If you've got all that, then you're ready to move on to the fun part, setting up our environment and creating our first FastAPI instance. Alright, stars. Now that we've got our prerequisites sorted, it's time to get things started. First, let's create a folder where we'll keep all our project files organized. Since I'm using Windows, I'll simply press Ctrl+Shift+N to create a new folder, and I'll name it FastAPI Tutorials. Feel free to name your folder anything you like, but keeping it simple and descriptive helps. Once you've created your folder, go ahead and open it. Now, here's a cool trick. Click on the path bar at the top of the folder window, type CMD, and hit Enter. This will open a command prompt directly in that folder's directory. Now, to open Visual Studio Code directly in this directory, just type code. And hit Enter. The code. Command is a neat shortcut that tells Visual Studio Code to open the current directory in the editor. It's super convenient when you want to jump right into coding. As you might notice, Visual Studio Code might prompt you about a new update that's been released. I'm not going to dive into that right now. We're here to code, and I don't want to keep you waiting. So, let's move on to our next step, which is setting up our virtual environment. Great job so far, stars. Now that we've got our project folder set up and Visual Studio Code ready to go, it's time to talk about virtual environments. If you're new to virtual environments, don't worry, I'll explain everything step by step. So, what exactly is a virtual environment? A virtual environment is a self-contained directory that contains everything you need to run a Python project. It allows you to manage dependencies for your project separately from other Python projects on your system. This is super important because it helps prevent conflicts between different projects and keeps your development environment clean and organized. Let's go ahead and create our virtual environment. In the command prompt, make sure you're in the FastAPI Tutorials directory we created earlier. Now, to create a virtual environment, we're going to use the following command, python-m-venv. Here, venv is the module we're using to create the environment, and env is the name of the environment. You can name it whatever you like, but env is a common choice. Once you run that command, you'll see that a new folder named env has been created inside your project directory. This folder contains all the necessary files and directories for your virtual environment. But we're not done yet, we still need to activate it. To activate the virtual environment on Windows, type the following command in your command prompt, \n/scripts/activate. And hit enter. You'll notice that your command prompt now shows env at the beginning of the line. This indicates that your virtual environment is active, and any Python commands you run will use the Python interpreter and packages from this environment. While we're working in this environment, any Python packages we install will be isolated to this project, which is exactly what we want. If you ever need to deactivate the virtual environment, you can simply type \n/scripts/deactivate. And hit enter. This will return you to your global Python environment. That's it. We've successfully created and activated our virtual environment. This is a crucial step in ensuring our project remains clean and organized as we move forward. Alright, now that we've got our virtual environment set up, it's time to talk about managing our project's dependencies. One of the best tools for this is called Poetry. If you haven't heard of it before, don't worry, I'm here to guide you through everything. So, what exactly is Poetry? Poetry is a dependency management tool for Python that makes it super easy to manage your project's libraries and dependencies. It also helps with packaging and publishing your projects. Think of it as an all-in-one tool that not only handles your dependencies but also creates and manages virtual environments for you. It's a game changer for Python developers. Before we start using Poetry, we need to install it. On Windows, since Python is already installed, you also have pip, the Python package installer, ready to go. We'll use pip to install Poetry. To install Poetry, open your command prompt. You should still be in your FastAPI Tutorials directory, and type the following command, pip install Poetry. I already have it installed, so I am not going to install it. Then, hit enter. This command will download and install Poetry for you. It might take a few moments, so be patient. Once Poetry is installed, we need to initialize it in our project. This will create a pyproject.toml file, which is where Poetry will manage all your dependencies. To initialize Poetry, type Poetry in it. And hit enter. Poetry will then ask you a series of questions about your project, such as the package name, version, description, author, and so on. If you're unsure about any of the questions, you can just hit enter to accept the default values. At the end, Poetry will ask you to confirm the settings. Once you do that, it will create the pyproject.toml file for you. This pyproject.toml file is the heart of your project's dependencies. Every time you add a new dependency using Poetry, it will be added to this file, and Poetry will manage it for you. Now that we've initialized Poetry, you're ready to start adding dependencies to your project. It's as simple as typing Poetry add package name whenever you want to include a new library. Poetry will handle the installation, and it'll also keep track of everything in the pyproject.toml file. That's all there is to it. With Poetry, managing your project's dependencies is a breeze. It takes care of everything, from virtual environments to dependency management, leaving you free to focus on coding. You can activate Poetry by typing the command Poetry shell, which will activate a virtual environment for you. However, since we already have a virtual environment set up, we'll continue using that for now. In our upcoming videos, we'll explore using Poetry for managing virtual environments and dependencies. Alright stars, now that we've got Poetry initialized, we're going to keep things simple and install FastAPI using pip. Even though Poetry is great for managing dependencies, we'll use pip here to get FastAPI up and running quickly. To install FastAPI, you'll want to type this command in your terminal, pip install FastAPI all. Let's break this down a bit. The pip install FastAPI part is straightforward. It installs FastAPI, our main tool for building APIs. But what's with the all? This optional flag tells pip to install all the extra goodies that come with FastAPI. This includes some powerful packages like Ginger2 for templating, HTTPX for making asynchronous HTTP requests, and much more. These extras make FastAPI even more versatile and powerful. As the installation runs, you'll see a few different packages being installed. Ginger2 is one of them. It's a modern and designer-friendly templating engine that helps you create HTML pages dynamically. HTTPX is another, a fully featured HTTP client for Python that supports asynchronous requests. Having these tools installed from the get-go ensures that we're ready for anything as we move forward with FastAPI. Now that FastAPI is installed, let's put it to work. We're going to create a simple route that returns a "Hello World" message. Start by creating a new Python file in your FastAPI tutorials folder. Let's name it main.py. In this file, we're going to write the code that will define our first path. Here's what's happening. We've imported FastAPI and created an instance of it called app. Next, we've defined a path using the @app_get decorator. This path, which is also called root in other languages, which we've named first_instance, will respond to HTTP GET requests at the root URL, which is just /. When someone accesses this path, they'll get a simple JSON response with the message "Hello, World." To see this in action, we need to run our FastAPI app. For that, we'll use Uvicorn, which is an ASGI server that will serve our FastAPI app. In your terminal, type Uvicorn main app reload. Let me explain what this command does. Uvicorn is the command to start the server. Main app tells Uvicorn to find the FastAPI instance named app in our main.py file. The reload flag is really handy. It tells Uvicorn to restart the server automatically whenever we make changes to our code. Once you run the command, Uvicorn will start the server, and you'll see some output in your terminal telling you that the app is running on http:// your local host address 8000. This is the default address and port where our FastAPI app is served. You can open this URL in your web browser by simply placing your cursor over the link in the terminal and pressing Ctrl on your keyboard. This should open a new browser tab showing our "Hello, World" message in JSON format. Congrats, you've just created your first FastAPI path. But wait, there's more. FastAPI automatically generates interactive API documentation for you. If you append docs to your app's URL, like this, the base URL /docs, you'll be taken to the Swagger UI. Here, you can see all your API routes. Try them out directly from the browser and explore the documentation that FastAPI provides for each route. Go ahead and test the route we just created. You'll see how easy it is to interact with your API directly from the browser. It's one of the features that makes FastAPI stand out. That's it for today's introduction to FastAPI. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out. In our next video, we'll dive into path operations in FastAPI, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay safe and don't forget, you are the star.